Welcome everybody to the Brownstoner webinar. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. We're going to allow our participants to roll right in, but we have all our panelists here. We're just going to give it one more minute and kick it off. I can see a lot of participants are coming in. So thank you for taking the time to be with us, which will be a great informative conversation. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Josh Schneps and I'm the publisher of Brownstoner and Schneps Media. It's great to have you all with us. We have a terrific lineup of panelists for you, and we want to start off by thanking our sponsors, which include Allison Ziefert, Real Estate Group, part of Compass, Scipione and Berg's Robert Berg, and Guaranteed Rates Kyla DeMarzio. Thank you all for being with us. We have a fantastic group. They're here to inform you, and we want to ask you to ask questions. You can join in the Q&A or the chat. We'll try to get to as many of the questions as we can. But please keep in mind, we're going to email you the contacts of all of these panelists, and they will certainly be more than happy to answer each and every one of your individual questions. So we're going to have a great discussion today. As all of you know that you registered for, we're going to talk about moving to Montclair, South Orange, Maplewood, and West Orange in New Jersey. So I'd love to start off with each of the panelists just introducing themselves and telling us a little bit about yourself. And if you don't mind, if we could start off with Allison.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Ziefert. I run the Allison Ziefert Real Estate Group out of Compass in New Jersey. And I have been a resident of South Orange, Maplewood for the last 25 years. And I'm happy to be here today to tell you all about what it's like living here, along with my colleague, Ginge Calhoun.
Ginge, do you mind introducing yourself as well, please?
Hi, I'm Ginge, as everybody just mentioned. I'm a buyer specialist with the Allison Ziefert Real Estate Group, and I've been working with Allison for the last 4 years, helping our clients buy and sell homes in Essex, Morris, and Union counties. I moved to Maplewood about 6 years ago with my husband and daughter, who's almost 9, after living on the Upper East Side for a couple of years and in LA, and clearly in England for many years before that.
Well, she certainly has good experience, especially with kids, for a lot of people that are looking to move with families from New York City. Our attorney, you can't do a transaction without an attorney. Robert, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Robert Berg. I'm a partner with Scipione and Berg. We are real estate attorneys. That is our entire practice. I've been practicing 30 years, and that's very depressing to say that long. But all I practice is real estate. We handle purchases and sales for any clients, and we are very, very comfortable working with first-time home buyers and walking you through a very overwhelming process.
And you can't do a transaction without the money. So Kyla from Guaranteed Rate.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kyla DeMarzio with Guaranteed Rate Mortgage. I have been, as I like to call it, providing financing solutions for my clients for over nearly 2.5 decades. I'm a North Jersey resident, and we pride ourselves on partnering with our partners as well as our clients to be able to hold your hand, walk you through the process, make sure that you're completely prepared. One of the specialties of my team and I, as well as what Rob said, is we do work very closely with our first-time home buyers. I have to say this, I am humbly but proudly stating that I'm currently ranked in the top 1% of lenders in the country, which means that you have a 99% or better chance of being absolutely thrilled with the rate, product, and service that my team and I can provide you with.
That's fantastic. So we have a great group here. Again, I want to emphasize that they want your questions. So feel free to hit the Q&A to ask your questions. We'll try to weave them into the conversations. And again, after the fact, they are here to give you information. I'm just going to ask the panelists also maybe to just briefly reintroduce your name and title when you start answering your first question, because we have people continuing to join the webinar throughout the conversation that may have missed the beginning intros. So Allison, I want to come back to you if that's okay. Plenty of people are not too familiar with the neighborhoods that you cover. So I'd really love for you to give just some background on the vibe and the people and, anything else that you can incorporate in terms of dining or shopping and the cultural scene and any similarities to Brooklyn, since most of our viewers are probably Brooklyn residents.
Sure. Again, I'm Allison Ziefert with the Allison Ziefert Real Estate Group at Compass. And to kind of give you in a nutshell, I would say our communities, each of them have slightly different flavor and feeling, just like every neighborhood in New York City has a little bit of different feeling to it. But all of the areas that we cover are places where city residents or former Brooklynites generally feel very comfortable landing. Part of that is the people. There's a huge variety of people, particularly creative people, which is one of the things that make our community so vibrant. There's great housing stock in a lot of different price points. So if you're into something that's a little more modern, or if you want something that's super charming or that needs a little bit of updating, different sizes and different architectural styles, it's never boring. It's not cookie cutter out here. So there's lots of variety. Shopping and dining, entertainment, recreation, there's all kinds of stuff to do. When you're living here, you're not relegated just to one town. So you might go to dinner in Montclair or Brookdale Park in Montclair if you live in Maplewood. Or if you live in Maplewood, you might go to Summit for dinner one time, or you like the shopping in Millburn. There's a great mall there. So you're really not stuck to your one town, just like in the city, you're not stuck to one neighborhood. But I would say, again, that if you're coming from the city, this is a place that's a really nice combination of suburb with those advantages, laundry, garages, no alternate side parking, more space, yards. Plus you have enough to do that you're not going to be bored and feeling like you're stuck, isolated in a suburb without people to hang out with. That's not going to be the case.
Laundry and garage, you got them all sold right there. So that was great background. I think that was good information for people. Just give them an overview of what those communities are really like. So Robert, let's go to you, our lawyer here, who can give some first steps in terms of the purchase process. What should people be thinking about from an attorney perspective when you're representing a client that are first steps, whether it's a contract review, inspections, loan approval, closing? I mean, what advice can you give to people when they're starting their searches?
Well, first, I'm Robert Berg. I'm a partner with Scipione and Berg. We are real estate attorneys. And let's talk about that. Real estate doesn't have to be overwhelming. A lot of times I'll hear from first-time home buyers and they're terrified of the process, and it doesn't have to be terrifying. I tell all my clients, take it in component parts. It's very important to think of it like that. The first part of any transaction is when you get a contract accepted. What happens then is you go into something called attorney review. And during attorney review, your attorney and a seller's attorney will modify the contract to protect their clients. And what I mean by that is when you see a New Jersey contract, it's 14 pages long. And while Ginge and Allison will walk you through every aspect of it, it's very important to understand that that contract can be altered in certain ways. And my job is to guide you through each part of the contract to make sure you're comfortable with what's happening. So attorney review is a 3 to 5 day process. The attorneys review it, talk to their clients, and we try and reach a resolution that everyone's comfortable with. And right after you go through attorney review, the next step is a home inspection. And again, your agent will set you up with a home inspector that they're comfortable with, who can talk to you again as a first-time home buyer. See, this is one thing you want to keep in mind. Every panelist here I've worked with, I had the privilege of working with, we take a lot of time to explain what's happening. You can hear a lot of terms, people can tell you a lot of things. Your best friend could have gone through a real estate purchase, but that doesn't help you with your particular transaction. So what we're going to do is guide you step by step. So once you go through attorney review and the home inspections are complete, you get a report from the home inspector. That's provided to your agent, that's provided to me. And then we'll discuss every component of that report so you understand what the inspector's concerns are and talk to you about what my concerns are and fashion a list of requests that'll be sent to the seller's attorney. When they get those requests, they have a couple of choices. One, they can say, we love our new buyers. We want to do everything to make them happy, and you'll be delirious. They'll do every repair you want. The other is they may not want to do any repairs, but they'll throw some money at you in order to stop from having to do the physical repairs and just make you satisfied. And there's nothing wrong with the credit either. And again, that's a conversation we could have at that point. But with a home inspection, the one thing you want to keep in mind, you're not going to get a brand new house. You're not going to get a perfect house. But what you want to get is a house that's safe and functional. You know that Tom Hanks movie where he falls through the bedroom floor? You don't want that. You want a house that you can move into and not worry about taking out your checkbook, but worry about just having your kids play in the backyard. Now, along with that process, and you'll be working with Kyla on this, is getting a loan approved. That's important. That's probably the most crucial step in the whole purchase process, because as I said, if you don't have a loan, you can't close the purchase. And the job of Ginge and Kyla and Allison and myself is to all coordinate what we're talking to you about so that you have a nice overview of the process and you're comfortable with it. Behind the scenes, my firm will do title searches to check the property, make sure there's no liens or judgments. We'll talk to you about ordering a survey so you know the property you're moving into is actually your property. And then we conduct the closing, which means from the beginning of the transaction to the end, we will handle all of it with you as a team, not just listening to us as your attorneys, but working together as a team.
I just want to share with everyone that this is being recorded and we will provide a recording afterwards. So you can still take notes, but don't worry if you miss anything. Let's talk about financing with Kyla. Kyla, if you can, walk us through what potential buyers need to know about financing, particularly in New Jersey right now.
Sure, happy to. Well, the most common question I get is, what are rates and how are rates and what's happening with the market? And, from what I could just to first offer some perspective, not to date myself, but when I first got in this business 25 years ago, I was lending money to a perfect credit client income assets sparkling application at 8.75%, and they were paying exhaustive amount of fees even to get that rate. And believe it or not, they were actually thrilled to get that rate. So right now, if you ask me this week, the market's taken a little bit of a hit this week, but here's what I mean by that. For months now, rates have been under 3% since the middle of last summer. So to one degree or another, depends upon the qualifications of the applicant, credit, income, assets, size of the loan, things of that nature, down payment as well. But whether we're talking about 2.75, 2.875, 2.99, or even 3%, quite honestly, even 4%, even though I haven't written a loan at 4% in well over a year and a half, money is still incredibly, by historical standards, extremely cheap, for lack of better words. Mortgage money is tax deductible. If there's anybody on this call that doesn't own a home and you are a renter, you know that you pay your rent every month. And if you have a $3,000 a month rent payment, which that would even be cheap for Brooklyn, that's $36,000 a year. And while that $36,000 provided a roof over your head for the year, you're not financially going to get any of that back. So when you own a home, full disclosure, I'm not a CPA, but I know enough to be dangerous to tell you that your interest on your mortgage, the interest that you pay on the mortgage, that rate that you borrow the money at, that interest is tax deductible. In addition to that, your property taxes are tax deductible. Now, yes, there's certain limitations how much you can deduct, and you can consult with your CPA on that. But you should be able to actualize a huge deduction by having a mortgage payment, paying property taxes that you will not achieve if you're paying rent. So in addition to, hopefully at springtime, you partner with a great CPA who can guide you through this, you should be able to actualize and maximize your dollar from a tax advantage standpoint. And in addition to that, you're paying into something that you will establish equity with. Now, if you're a renter, you might not know what equity is, but what that means is, let's say if you buy a home for $700,000 and you put down $200,000, I'll just make the math easy for the example, and you have a $500,000 mortgage. Well, you're going to pay your mortgage payment every month, and at the end of 1 year, let's say on a 30-year loan, you no longer owe $500,000, you might owe $487,000 or $490,000. And in the meantime, with property values appreciating, the value of your home's going up, your mortgage loan balance is going down, the difference between these two is called your equity. Whereas when you're renting, if you rented that $3,000 apartment a month, you just paid $36,000 in 2020 and you have nothing to show for it. So I still stand behind, even if rates do, continue to tick up a little bit, it's still a great time to buy a home because you're going to actualize some appreciation, whether to one degree or another over the course of time. You're going to have a better tax advantage. And let's face it, the American dream is to own a home.
Thank you, Kyle. That was a great explanation, good background for everybody here. Ginge, let's talk about where the state of the market is right now in these communities, because as Kyla was saying, I mean, interest rates are at all-time lows. So can you give a little background on, what you're seeing in those neighborhoods?
Yes, for sure. And for anyone that wasn't here at the beginning, my name is Ginge Calhoun. I'm the buyer specialist with the Allison Ziefert Real Estate Group. So typically our market has always been popular and competitive, and this was pre-COVID. So a lot of people moved to these towns because we're commutable to New York. That being said, it has been extremely competitive really since April, May of last year, once everybody got over the initial shock of COVID and we figured out how to be able to continue to show homes. Many people who previously hadn't considered living in the suburbs and definitely hadn't considered New Jersey are now, they want the garage and they want the yard, and they just need more space to work from home, to have their kids at home. So we have seen an even bigger influx of buyers than typically we would normally see. So that being said, inventory is low. It's a seller's market, which it has been for many years. And typically we're seeing homes go anywhere from 5 to 25, 30% over the list price, depending on what towns they're in. And to give you kind of broad stats,
Wow.
if we compare 2019 compared to 2020, the average sales prices in a few of the towns we cover, so Maplewood went up 11%, South Orange went up 6%, and Montclair went up 19%. And then West Orange was 9%. So it is competitive. That being said, we have had a lot of success getting our buyers into homes, even in this competitive market. So we helped multiple families last year in this market be competitive, working with people like Kyla and Rob to get you in the best position possible. And there are some times when we can get buyers into what we call exclusive listings. So they're not yet listed homes. Allison and I have a great network of other realtors in the area. We also have some sellers that sometimes want to sell off market. And we did have a number of clients that we connected that way with homes in order to, they did manage to kind of circumnavigate some of the competitiveness of the market. So it is really important to find a team that works for you and will work really hard for you to get you in the place that you want to be in.
Ginge, Brooklyn, especially, part of New York City, has such beautiful and diverse housing stock. Could you give a sense of the types of homes that are in each of these neighborhoods and how they might vary?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say, I lived on the Upper East Side. I know Brooklyn a little bit. I lived there very briefly, but I mean, we have a huge range of homes here, from ranches and bi-levels to colonials and Victorians. And we do have some buildings as well, if people, are looking in more of an apartment building. I would say our housing stock is full of character. So what that means, it's on the older side. So some of our homes are 100 years old, and they are filled with that original charm and creaky floors. So, it depends on what you're looking for, but we always say there's generally something for everybody here, and finding the house that you love. I think it's a little different from Brooklyn, depending on where in Brooklyn you're looking. I know kind of areas like Ditmas Park, you are more likely to find single family homes that are kind of separate from other buildings. And I think too, for us, kind of what Allison touched on earlier, a lot of our buyers are moving from Brooklyn. So you will find a community of people that are finding homes that, they like as much as where they previously rented or owned in Brooklyn.
And Allison touched on this a little bit, but could you talk about the communities in terms of their walkability and overall transportation?
Yeah, so a lot of our towns do have direct train service when everybody starts commuting again into, typically people go into New York Penn, some people will go into Hoboken and take the path. Some people actually get the ferry if they work downtown, which seems wonderful in the summer, but I can't imagine doing it in the snow. And we also have a bus that goes express into Port Authority. And so the communities, a lot of them are walkable, depending on how far you want to walk. I feel like when we come from the city, we're very used to walking everywhere. So 15-20 minute walk doesn't seem too terrible, but once you start living here and you start driving a car, anything over 5 minutes seems terrifying. But we are, a lot of the towns are walkable to the stations, and even if you're a little further from the village where the stations are, the towns, in a lot of the towns we cover, there is a jitney service, which is like a school bus for grown-ups, and it drives around the neighborhoods and it takes you straight to the train station. So a lot of people, if you want to be a little further from town and spend a little less money, you can get the jitney and still be at the train station on time. And the jitney runs right with the schedule of the train.
So we have a question here, and again, I want to just welcome everyone to pop in questions either in the Q&A or chat. But we have a question on the amount of down payments. I don't know, Kyla, do you want to maybe take that? Are there opportunities to put down less if you're a first-time home buyer? What with such a competitive market, do you have to put more down?
Sure, absolutely. I'll be glad to take that. What was the question?
In terms of how much you have to put down when you're buying a home now?
Yeah, and I see the question, how much do you have to put down to avoid PMI? So PMI stands for Private Mortgage Insurance, which is an insurance policy that is placed on a mortgage by an independent third-party insurance provider on any mortgage that's made in America where the buyer is not putting down the traditional 20% of the purchase price. So how it works is this. There's a number of factors that determine how much PMI is. There's really four main factors. Number one is the percentage of the purchase price. So in some instances on a conventional loan, I don't want to get too granular and lose folks, but if the loan amount is determined by federal lending laws and they're adjusted on an annual basis. Right now, the federal lending law conventional loan limit in northern New Jersey and Brooklyn, and all 5 boroughs, by the way, is $548,000. I think it's $250. Why they couldn't just make it $548, I don't know. And up to $822,350 is also considered conventional lending. It's just in a slightly different category. On a loan of up to $548,000, the loan amount, not the sales price, but the loan amount, buyer can put down as little as 3% on a conventional loan. If the loan amount is greater than $548,000, up to $822,000, buyer can put down as little as 5% of the sales price. That would be on a traditional conventional mortgage. The cost of PMI is determined by the percentage of the purchase price that the buyer's putting down, and it gets chunked down in 5%. So it's most expensive at 3%, little less expensive with 5% down, less expensive yet with 10% down, even less with 15% down, and then it goes all away entirely with 20% down. The other sub-factors that affect how much the monthly premium is, because that's where you'll pay it, it'll be attached to your mortgage payment, is the size of the loan and your credit score. Rule of thumb, stronger your credit, better your scores, everything is going to be less expensive to borrow because in the lending world, everything is risk-based. So there is another type of loan, just to kind of give you an overview, other than a conventional loan that I just talked about. It's something called the FHA loan, which I'll touch on it briefly. It's not widely used in the markets that likely anybody on this call would be looking at. With an FHA loan, you can put as little as 3.5% down of the sales price. An FHA is a little more flexible as it pertains to some credit issues. If an applicant has some credit issues or things like that, so the short answer is no, you don't need to have the traditional 20% down to purchase a home. You do need to fall into one of the above buckets to qualify, but this is where before you even begin your search or partner with somebody like Allison or Ginge, this is where I come in, and we'll get to that in a second, but take an application and do a proper pre-approval for you so we can talk about what you qualify for, how much you're going to need, what's your price threshold, what are you comfortable with, not just how much money do you want to part with, but where do you want to keep your monthly payment. So all of that probably goes into the next segment.
It just I see Allison and Ginge are answering some of the questions here, but just in terms of price range, can you give a sense in terms of the neighborhood, some starting points, and how much are you working with first-time home buyers that are coming to New Jersey?
Allison, you want me to go?
I can answer the question. We definitely work with first-time home buyers. A lot of our clients, particularly those coming from the city, have been in rentals for years. So this is their first experience buying something, and maybe even their first experience since childhood, potentially living in a single family house. As far as the price points in the towns that we're talking about today, Montclair, the average price point is in the 800s, South Orange, 700s, Maplewood, high 600s, and West Orange, mid 400s would be averages for those towns.
Okay, that should give everyone a really good sense. I think going back to another question, we were talking, Kyla, you said 5% down. That sounds like a dream come true to me. But I think question for Ginge and Allison, it sounds like that market's competitive. And when it gets so competitive, do you find that buyers really have to come to the table with a certain amount of cash to be taken seriously?
This is a conversation we've had a lot, especially in the last year, and with Kyla too. With the rates being so low, especially last year, we could definitely make, I guess, the case for our buyers that they were putting less down because they wanted to take advantage of these great mortgage rates, and they just wanted to spend less. And really, with the markets the way they were in COVID, a lot of clients wanted to keep cash free in order to, make the most of that should there be a rainy day or they needed that. I think 10% down, really, 20% typically is kind of the gold standard. 10% is ideally where you want to be. That being said, we've certainly had clients do 5%, and there are, we can certainly show proof of funds that identify that this client has other cash available. They're just choosing to finance in another way. But in a competitive market, as you touched on, Josh, if a seller and a listing agent are looking at multiple offers and their offers are identical and someone has 20% and someone has 5%, the 20% may win if everything else is the same.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I saw another question come in where, and I've heard this on a lot of these webinars that we've done. Well, can I download a contract online, or is it worth it? I mean, one thing I can tell everyone is we have a fantastic group of panelists, but you need to have a great team around you. I'm sure for most of us, our home is the largest investment we may make in our lifetimes. And if not, maybe it's the greatest appreciation you could ever get. And you want to make sure you pay that extra money to have a great team around you. So I can't say that enough. And that's why we're thrilled to have this group here. And maybe we can run into that with Robert. Let me ask you this. Is there anything different about the buying process, particularly in New Jersey, that a lot of our New York City viewers should know about, as well as anything that's coming up now with contracts related to the pandemic?
Sure, of course. Well, first and foremost, in New Jersey, there are less people in the closing room than there are in New York. I think most of you might remember when you did your closing, there were a lot of different people. In New Jersey, there are some distinct differences. We don't do home inspections, for example, till we're out of attorney review and under contract. My understanding is in New York, you can actually do your home inspections first, which seems to make more sense. But in New Jersey, that's not the way we do it. As far as the rest of the closing process goes, they're fairly similar. As I said, we go through attorney review, then we go into home inspections, then we go into the loan approval process, and then we conduct the closing. And what you want to keep in mind is, as I said earlier, everything we're going to be doing is a step-by-step guide for you to make sure your home purchasing process is successful. I know that there was a question that was asked about how to build your team. And what it really comes down to is feeling comfortable with the people you're working with, understanding all the costs and fees associated with your closing to make sure that, number one, you've budgeted for it. Number two, you know what your obligations and your rights are.
And what about
as far as COVID goes, there have been some distinct changes. Our contracts add now something called a COVID-19 provision. And what that stands for is this: when you're buying a house, God forbid you're affected by COVID, not just for your personal health, but let's say that your job changes, your hours are cut, your company closes a branch or division. We put language in our contracts that don't punish you for that. I mean, it's an unfortunate tragedy that the world is going through, but you as a first-time home buyer do not get punished if something happens with COVID. We give you what we call an escape clause. If your income changes, you can walk away from the deal without penalty. As far as other practical aspects go, Closings actually do take place in my office. I'm not one of those people that thinks you've got to stand in a parking lot and hand documents through a window. We're very COVID specific here. We take all the precautions, but we like to talk to our clients. We like to have you really have the experience of buying a home, sitting down with your attorney, sitting down with your title officer, and going through each and every document together so you know what you're spending your money on and what you've just done. Some banks, and I don't know if Kyla can talk about this, but some banks are doing something called a flash closing, which allows you to sign some of your documents online virtually, but some of the documents must be signed in the presence of your attorney, such as a mortgage and a note. Those are obviously two very important documents. Other than that, as far as COVID goes, home inspections are a little bit different. Some sellers don't want everyone in the house. They don't want all the parties in the house. They want a home inspector, maybe one of the buyers in a house. They don't want a lot of additional people in houses. They don't want experts checking additional repair issues. People are very cautious about that. So it's more of an arm's length transaction now, but it's still a transaction that can be very successful.
Kyla, do you want to answer that question in terms of virtual versus in person?
I'd be happy to. First, if I can humbly say, I'm really proud that I work for a company that, in my opinion, is just head and shoulders above the rest of the industry. Guaranteed Rates technology and our platform and the services that we can provide our clients are just, we've been doing things for a number of years that other companies still can't seem to figure out how to do. And Rob touched on one of them, which is our flash close. And this is not something that we invented with COVID. We've been actually doing this for a number of years, and we find that our clients, the consumer, the title agencies, our agents, the realtors, attorneys love this because in the simplest sense, what it is on pretty much almost all of our transactions, there's some few small minor cases where we might not be able to do this. If it's a certain jumbo investor on the loan, sometimes they don't allow what we call our flash close electronic signing. But what it means is, I'd say probably on over 90% of our transactions, the client gets the loan documents, almost all of the loan package, no later than minimally the day before closing, if not sooner. They get to click on the link, they open the link, they can read their documents, they can call their attorney, Rob, and say, hey, I have some questions about this. When you get a minute, can you get back to me? They can call me, my team. So the whole team is there to support them. At 12:01 a.m. the night before the actual closing, that same link goes live. Then they click on the link and they electronically sign almost 90% of their loan documents. So yes, the in-person portion in New Jersey, based on state laws, is still required, as Rob mentioned. But now what's happened is you as a buyer have signed off on pretty much most of the boilerplate documents that are pretty straightforward the morning of closing. So now when you go meet with your attorney in the afternoon, closing takes 15, 20, 25 minutes, maybe. All of the heavy lifting is already done. If I can just call Ginge out for a minute, I think when we did our first one, she sent me a text saying 17 minutes and we're done. And so people want to get on with their day. They're anxious to get their keys and get in their home and get back to business. So it's really great.
So let's go back to the beginning of the process. That's like the end of the process when everything gets done. But I always think about the HGTV show where they bring the family to the house and the house is like amazing and they're like, I want it. And then they explain to them that it's 3 times their budget. So, really, where should people start off when it comes to financing and what they can afford? Because I'm sure even from the brokerage team, they want to be able to take you to properties that you can afford. So what is your recommendation when people first start out on the process?
I am so glad you asked. I've been hoping and waiting you'd ask this question all afternoon. This is really the starting line. The starting line, and this is where you really want to pay attention, is if you're a potential buyer and you're considering buying now or in the relative near future, even within the next 6 to 8 to 9 months, you need to get properly pre-approved for your financing, not just because great agents like Allison and Ginge are going to need that before they can start to do their job for you, but so that you know what you qualify for. And, when you go through a pre-approval process with my team and I, we like to pride ourselves that we don't do what I call lazy loan officering, which looks like this. You walk in the bank, you tell them you make X, and they say, oh, here's a letter that says you're pre-approved up to $800,000. Well, that's great, but I need to have the very responsible and serious conversation with you as a buyer, not just what you can get pre-approved for, but you might not like your monthly payment with an $800,000 loan. That might feel uncomfortable to you. So just because I can get you $1 million mortgage does not mean that that is the range that you should go search in. So the first step is getting properly pre-approved. Basically what that looks like is my clients, 99% of all my clients, they go on a link, they go on my website, they can check me out so they know that I'm a real person. They click on a link that says apply now. They take 15 minutes to fill out a half a dozen short screens of questions surrounding employment questions. Where do you work? It captures your contact information. At the very end, they do enter their social security number. That is a requirement. There is a credit check. There's no other way around it. Good news is you get to run your own credit on our site. It doesn't cost you anything. And you get to see your own 3 credit scores directly with the bureaus instantly. So we're totally transparent. Clients love that part. It's good for 4 months, so we don't have to keep rerunning it. Once they do that, they then hear from either myself or my team. Once we have a quick overview of what the application looks like, we make our documentation requests. That typically is pay stubs, W-2s, potentially tax returns, online asset verification system. And we do request all of this up front because, with all due respect, we can't just take somebody's word that they put on an application that they make $300,000. And now I'm putting a document in their hand that says I can provide financing when I haven't seen any documentation supporting that. So that's number one. We ask for that documentation. That is a requirement, not just because we have to do our due diligence and agents like Ginge, Allison, they expect us to do that. But I also want to look at everything up front and make sure that there's nothing that could come up in the loan process that could cause issue or delay or problem. So we do all of that up front and we vet out everything up front. And we have a high level conversation with you as the buyer surrounding not just what you'd qualify for, but what your comfort level is, if you want to move up, move down, you want to adjust your down payment. So by the time we finish with that process, and by the way, all that can happen within 24 hours. So by the time we finish with that process, I can then put you back in the hands of Ginge and say, okay, great news. Here's the deal. Based on what Mr. and Mrs. Smith are comfortable with, it looks like they should probably be searching for homes in the $700,000 to $800,000 range. So now Ginge has the intel that she needs so she can properly do her job for the client. And she can only show you homes that not only you'll fall in love with, but that you'll feel comfortable actually submitting offers on. The second reason it's extremely important to get a proper pre-approval up front, not just some piece of paper off the internet, but have your lender, have me vet out your financials, is because let me tell you what happens now more than ever. And I love getting these phone calls because I also know that there's many lenders that don't do this. So it allows me to champion for you as a buyer and let you stand out against others. There's not a day that goes by that I don't get a phone call from a listing agent saying, hi, Kyla, this is so-and-so from ABC Realty. I have your pre-approval here for 1 Main Street in Maplewood for Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Just want to hear your voice verbally, human to human, that they're checked out, they're good. And I can then say, my client is not only pre-approved, I have collected their pay stubs, their W-2s, their tax returns, their finances, their credit check, their verification of employment. That is a bulletproof, ironclad pre-approval. We are ready to go. My file is wrapped so tight, I could go to underwriting tomorrow. So then I can then reassure the listing agent that you as the buyer are really on the ball, serious, ready to go. The response I get every single time is, wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. My seller is going to be so glad to hear that. Then I get a subsequent phone call from Ginge or Allison, and they say, okay, we're going up against 8 other offers, 18 other offers, 4 other offers. The only way we're going to win this is if we offer a really aggressive closing. We got to close in 30 days. Kyla, can you do it? And I'll say, is the client up for it? Ginge will say, we'll collaborate with the client. If the client's, I said, yeah, I could do it because they got me everything we needed up front. I'm ready to hit the ground running. And I can honestly tell you that exact example has happened time and time and time again for years with the team that's on this phone. And I do know that with the proper collaboration of the right teammates, such as the amazing professionals that are on this call, Ginge, Allison, Rob. We have partnered together to help clients win and beat out other offers. I mean, I could be wrong, Ginge, Allison, you can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that we've won transactions where there's 18, 20 offers. We might have come in second on that one that there was 34 offers. I mean, that's a pretty good ratio, I think.
I love it. Ginge, if people don't really have family or friends that live in one of these communities, what are some recommendations that you give to buyers to really find the neighborhood that's the right fit for them?
Yeah, the good news is that especially with COVID, we have put together a ton of resources to be able to help people considering New Jersey suburbs figure out what they're like, and we're happy to share those with anyone that wants to connect with us. We have town tour maps. We also put together a guidebook of all the towns we've covered, especially for the participants of this call, which we're happy to share with anyone who would like it. We also have videos. We've got a living in West Orange, living in Montclair, living in South Orange and Maplewood videos, which we can again share too. And there's actually people who live in those communities talking about their experience and what it's like for them. And we have a fantastic website, which Allison has laboriously had updated and diligently done in the last couple of months, which has, again, a lot of resources on there. Something else, which circling back to pre-approvals and what you want to spend, we also have our market reports, which literally like the percentages we're giving you an average sales price. Each month we get updated numbers on those. And that for some people really helps guide them in terms of what communities they want and also what they want to spend. So if you want to spend $600,000, you're probably not going to look in Montclair. Because it's not going to be fun. That's not going to be a fun search for you. So there are multiple ways that we can help people figure it out. And, now that the weather is getting better, fingers crossed, you can jump in the car, come out, drive around. You can get coffees. Everybody in our towns has gotten really good at wearing masks and being safe. So you can just get a feel for that too. And even visiting some of the playgrounds as well.
I have another closing question for Allison, but just another question here. And I'm not exactly sure who wants to address this one, but beyond purchase price, there's closing costs and taxes and other things. How can people budget for the expenses of a complete purchase,
I'll
particularly in
answer,
New Jersey as compared to New York?
if you don't mind, I'll answer some of that. What I try and do with any of my clients is we send out something we call a purchase overview. And it gives you the step-by-step of what to expect. And we also then send you out information on what types of costs you're going to have. Our agreements give you a breakdown. The first and foremost, you're going to get something from your lender that'll give you certain costs that you're going to incur, but you should budget for home inspections, which are about $500 to $650, surveys, which can be about $750, attorney's fees, which I'll discuss with each of you at some point. You can talk about title insurance, which is something you need to have, and that could be, $1,500 to $3,000, depending upon the amount of the purchase, because that's what it's based upon. As I said, a survey is about $750, and all those costs are paid at the time of closing, other than a home inspection. And I wanted to make that point because a lot of you have asked me over the course of my career, how much money do I lose if the deal doesn't work? How much of my deposit do I lose if the deal doesn't work? The answer is nothing. I can speak for my firm. We don't charge clients a dime, even expenses, if a deal doesn't work. We don't believe in kicking someone when they're down. It's not the way I practice law, nor my partner. The title companies we work with, the surveyors we work with, you're not going to be charged a fee because, as we've said from the first time we started this seminar, we're a team, and that's what we do for each other. At some point, you will find a house. This team will find you some house. This team will get you a loan. I'll do my best to make sure it closes on time. So we're going to work with you, not against you. But as far as any other specific closing costs go, that's on a deal by deal basis. But what I just told you, those really are the costs that you're always going to incur. Thanks.
Anyone else have something to add there, or did he do a good job?
He did a real good job. Kyla has a good rule of thumb too. I think she should share.
Yeah, happy to. Well, here's the great news for you folks that are in New York looking to come to New Jersey. It's cheaper over here. And by the way, full disclosure, I'm also licensed in New York, so I lend in both states. I see many transactions up close and personal. And I can tell you that a good rule of thumb, all of your closing costs, I'm going to add one little footnote to what Rob said. In addition to the cost of your home inspection, the other two items that you would typically pay up front would be an appraisal fee, the cost to actually have the home appraised. That can range anywhere from $435 up as high as $650 if the property is over $1 million. And usually a very small application fee for the mortgage, $150 or so. But everything else is typically due at closing. And I usually tell clients a good rule of thumb for your closing costs in New Jersey, if the sales price is somewhere between, let's say, $600,000 and $999,000, which somewhere in there is going to be in the markets that you're looking at, your closing costs are typically about 2.25%, maybe 2.5% of the sales price. If the property is over $1 million, you take that plus you add 1% of the sales price because there is what's called a mansion tax. But this is where I get to make you feel better. If you were in New York and you were buying a home between $600,000 and $999,000, your closing costs would be easily 4.5% of your sales price. Because in New York, there is, unlike in New Jersey, you have a buyer's attorney and a seller's attorney. You also have a bank attorney in New York, and you as the buyer pay that fee. And you also have a tax that goes to the state of New York that is equivalent to, it's called a mortgage recording tax. So if you buy in the 5 boroughs, it's nearly 2% of the mortgage that you borrow. So if you get a $700,000 mortgage, you're going to pay a $14,000 tax to the state of New York. In addition to all your other closing costs, you don't have to pay that in New Jersey. So come on over.
There's an attorney for the attorney for the attorney. Allison, a closing question for you. What would be your top advice for really people that are seriously considering the move from New York City to New Jersey?
Advice. Definitely work with a lender, talented person like Kyla. Figuring out what your buying power is from the get-go is just fundamental. And then I would say there are a lot of ways to do research to try to find that perfect fit for you as far as a community. We always recommend, Ginge and I always recommend, focus on the community first, and then we can find you a house. So going to the town and attending any events if possible. You know, with COVID, it's been a little harder to do that. Just kind of strolling the towns, getting a sense of what the downtowns are like and getting a feel for the people, going to some parks or things like that. And then do your research online. Everybody does. And try to connect with people that you know. If you have friends who you know live in a certain place and they can connect you with residents who actually live there, I think talking to current residents is always a great way to really get a flavor and different perspectives on what a community is like. And Ginge and I are always happy to, try to provide any buyer with whatever information they need in order to solve that puzzle for themselves.
Well, this was all fantastic information. I want to thank everyone for watching, and of course, our panelists and sponsors. Thank you so much, and we'll be sure to email everyone, not just a recording of this, but the contacts of all the panelists. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyla.
Take care.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.